When we think of amazing construction projects, we usually picture things like skyscrapers or supercomputers. But honestly, the most complex, most incredible construction project on Earth happens in just 40 weeks. It's the story of how every single one of us came to be. So let's dive into this amazing journey, from a single cell to a fully formed human. It's a question that's just mind-boggling when you really think about it. How does one tiny cell, smaller than a grain of salt, know how to build a brain, a beating heart, and curious eyes? Well, that's exactly the incredible biological blueprint we're going to unpack together. Okay, so to really get a handle on this whole process, we're going to break it down into three big phases, or as you probably know them, trimesters. Think of it like a master plan, where each stage has its own super important set of goals. All right, first up, trimester one. These first 12 weeks are all about laying the groundwork. I mean, it's kind of like building the foundation and the frame of a house. It is absolutely critical for everything that's going to come next. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around this, but at the end of the very first month, what will one day be a person is only about the size of a single poppy seed. It's just this powerful reminder that every single one of us starts from the most incredibly tiny beginning. Just look at this. This side-by-side really shows you the explosive pace of development. Over on the left, at just 6 weeks, you can see these tiny little buds where arms and legs are going to form. Now fast forward just 4 weeks to week 10, and boom. Those buds have already transformed into little limbs with elbows and even toes. It's like watching a building go up in hyperspeed. And get this, as early as week 5, this special little cluster of cells that will eventually become the heart starts to pulse at around 110 times a minute. It's not even a fully formed heart yet, more like a tiny tube, but it's already working so hard. Amazing, right? So what's the big picture by the end of this foundational stage, at week 12? Well, a lot has happened. The brain and spinal cord are forming, all the major organs are in place, and the embryo is now officially called a fetus. And it even has distinct fingers and toes. Basically, all the essential pieces are on the board. Okay, now we are moving into trimester 2. If the first trimester was about drawing up the blueprint and laying the foundation, this phase is all about building the structure, adding all the important details, and kind of testing out the new equipment. Yeah, this is a period of just massive growth. The bones start to harden, forming a real skeleton. Fine hair starts to cover the body, and the fetus becomes so active that the mother can often feel those first little fluttering movements, a moment, as you can imagine, many parents never ever forget. This is also when a whole world of sensation just opens up. The fetus can now suck its thumb, it starts to establish its own little sleep-wake cycles, and can even open and blink its eyes. And what's just incredible, it can now hear sounds from the outside world, like music, and most importantly, its mother's voice. And that sense of hearing, it leads to something truly amazing: learning. Yeah, learning before you're even born. In one famous study, newborns actually showed a clear preference for a story they had heard read to them while in the womb. And as this quote here highlights, they also prefer their mother's voice over a stranger's, which just goes to show that that powerful bond begins long before birth. And that brings us to the home stretch, trimester 3. This is the final push, and it's all about gaining weight and making those last-minute preparations for life in the great big world outside. But you want to know what's really cooking during this trimester? It's all happening in the brain. At its peak, new nerve cells are forming at a mind-boggling rate of 250,000 per minute. The brain is literally wiring itself at a phenomenal speed, laying the foundation for every thought, every feeling, and every action to come. A huge part of this final trimester is just packing on the pounds. In fact, the fetus will more than double its size in these last few months. And that layer of fat is so important for survival. It's like insulation that helps the baby stay warm after birth. Okay, so think of this as the final readiness checklist. The lungs, which are one of the last organs to mature, are finally ready for breathing. The fetus responds really strongly to light and sound, bones have hardened, and it even has periods of what looks like dreaming. And then finally, it typically flips into that head-down position, getting ready for the big day. So you might be wondering, how on earth do we know all of this stuff in such incredible detail? I mean, for most of human history, this was a completely hidden world. But modern technology has given us this remarkable window into the womb. The most common tool, and one you've probably heard of, is the ultrasound. It's a totally safe procedure that uses high-frequency sound waves. These waves basically bounce off the fetus and are translated into a live image on a screen, giving doctors and parents a real-time peek into this hidden world. It's the first baby picture, really. And an ultrasound can tell us a ton. Doctors use it to make sure the fetus is growing properly, to check its position, and to monitor its movement and heart rate. And of course, for many parents, it's the big moment they find out if they're having a boy or a girl. Now, for an even deeper look, right down to the genetic level, there's a test called amniocentesis. It's usually done in the second trimester if there's a specific reason for concern. It involves carefully taking a very small sample of the amniotic fluid, that's the protective liquid around the fetus, to test it.
So, what can this test actually tell us? Well, the fluid has cells from the fetus in it. From those cells, scientists create what's called a karyotype, which is basically a picture or a map of all the chromosomes. By looking at this map, doctors can spot certain genetic conditions by looking for any missing or extra chromosomes and checking the levels of specific enzymes. So when you put it all together, from a tiny, tiny seed to a fully formed person, from that first little flutter of a heartbeat to the final preparations for birth, this incredible 40-week journey is the universal story of how every single one of us begins. It's our story. And it really leaves us with a pretty profound thought, doesn't it? We don't just arrive in the world as blank slates. Our ability to hear, to see, and even to learn all gets a head start in the 9 months before we take our very first breath. So it really makes you wonder, what does this whole journey before birth tell us about the very nature of who we become?